Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Todd's podcast. Our guest today is a local out of here in Polk County. I think you'll find this episode very enjoyable. She spent 12 plus years as a C-suite leader and advisor to Fortune 100 brands, professional sports teams, entertainment properties, and global nonprofits, where she was president and the chief growth officer for IEG. We'll find out a little bit more about IEG as we go on. In 2013, she formed her business, Emily Rogers Consulting and Coaching. She's been published and quoted in Forbes over a dozen times. She has 2 master's degrees, which is 2 more than I have. She was born in Orlando. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What hospital?
Winter Park Hospital.
Winter Park, okay. Yeah. She was raised in Bartow, where she ran with a pretty tough crowd, I understand.
Bartow was pretty tough back in the mid-'80s.
Yeah, especially with the people that you know that I know. I also understand there's this guy named Bartow Bill. He was kind of a local legend. He's a perfect geezer and wheezer. He's so old, and I think he's a lot older than you, so you probably never had to deal with him.
No, but I know him.
You know him, so you know that he's got several restraining orders from different people in Bartow. So we'll keep his last name out. But Bartow Bill, I know you listen and you know you love us, and you're our greatest fan. So thank you. Let's talk a little bit about your company. Oh, I'm sorry, our guest is Emily Rogers. I'm sorry, I forgot to give your name. Your business is Emily Rogers Consulting and Coaching, which is executive level professional development coaching for personal development. Tell us a little bit about that and how you came about with that.
Sure, happy to. And it's great to be here. I was thrilled when you reached out a couple of weeks ago and invited me to be part of your podcast. I've been following this since you launched it, about a year and a half ago now?
About a year and a half, coming up, a year and a half. We're about 36, 38 episodes in, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. Haven't listened to all of them, but I've listened to quite a few and have really enjoyed the conversations that you shared with others in our community, and was just honored to be invited to be here.
Eli
so
makes me sound very good.
Yeah, he does. Eli does a great job.
He's also the most eligible bachelor in all of Polk County.
Oh, no kidding. Well, that is really good to know.
Yes,
Nice. I'll keep that in mind, Eli. So, I'm Emily Rogers. Grew up in Bartow. Proud to be from Polk County. My husband is born and raised Lakelander here, and we live just east of Highland City on the Rogers Family Ranch. And my business was formed in 2013 after a long career that you referenced there. And I coach leaders and teams, and my business exists to help leaders and teams grow in purposeful and balanced ways, and in ways that are really meaningful and important to them.
So there really is a thought process to grow in your business. It doesn't just happen haphazardly, it seems.
Yeah. And
probably grows better that way.
Yeah, and as you know, I mean, in this market that we live and work and play in here in Central Florida, our economy has been thriving, booming for the last 10 years or so. And so we have a lot of, fast growth companies here in our community. And when you grow fast, as you know, you can experience growing pains. And so I help leaders and teams kind of sort through that and find a better path forward.
So one of the things, in doing your research is you're also a keynote speaker. What topics do you keynote speak on? Or if someone said, hey, I need a speaker and we'd like to talk about X, Y, or Z, you can tailor a presentation to them like that?
Yeah, I sure can. So a few topics that I speak on frequently are the topic of just being a mindful leader, being more intentional, being more purposeful. That's often what I'm talking with a lot of my clients about. I also speak on the topic of creating intelligent change. Change is coming at us all the time and even more rapidly. And so leaders need to learn how to navigate that. And so I'll often speak on that topic of navigating change. And then one of my favorite topics I speak on, which I'll actually be speaking to our local Rotary group about this in a couple weeks, is the topic of legacy leadership.
Yep.
So being a legacy-minded leader and what that means and how to do that.
I'd like to talk about that a little bit later in the
sounds
show,
good.
because I think that's a great topic for us to talk about. Part of what you do is, I don't think I said this, the 3 pillars of your business.
Yeah.
executive coaching, team coaching and development, and leadership development training. What are those three things, and why are they so important to what we do as a company?
Sure. So I work with leaders one-on-one as an executive coach. And so that typically involves like an initial 6-month engagement. I'm meeting with my clients every few weeks. We're focusing on what matters to them, their goals, the outcomes that they're trying to accomplish, and I'm helping them and supporting them and getting them to where they want to be. And so that's a very, intimate one-on-one relationship that I have with many leaders in this community from all walks of life, from CEOs to mid-level leaders to business owners and entrepreneurs. And so that's always fun to build those trusting relationships in a one-on-one setting as an executive coach. And then I also work with teams to help teams just function better together, be more cohesive, build more trust, be more aligned, work more collaboratively together. So that's a really dynamic role that I play with teams in a team coaching setting, and that usually takes place over a period of several months. And then lastly, you mentioned the leadership development. I go into many organizations and customize leadership development training based on what their needs, whether it's a group of mid-level managers or executive level leaders. So I do that within organizations, and then I offer a number of different open enrollment programs throughout the year, a mindful leadership program, which is running now, a mastering leadership program, a leadership essentials program that's for mid-level leaders, and my legacy leadership program, which I run in the fall. So lots of training. And you mentioned the 2 master's degrees earlier. Both of those are in education. I have a master's degree in reading and language arts and another master's in educational leadership, and started my career as a teacher here in Polk County with bachelor's in elementary ed, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade.
Okay.
And so teaching has just always been part of what I love to do. So I wear 3 different hats today. I teach and I coach and I mentor and develop. So those are the things that I just love to do.
I want to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I want to talk a little bit, before that part of your life.
Yeah.
You and I met, I think you were Miss Florida Citrus.
I was, yeah.
Back in 93, I think.
93, yeah. Yeah, and you were real involved in the citrus showcase at the time. The citrus industry was really booming at that time. It was a very different industry then than it is today, sadly. And I was Miss Florida Citrus in 93, 94. At that time, we were employees of the Florida Department of Citrus, and our full-time job was to support the department's field reps all across the nation, up in Canada, and in some places, outside of the U.S. And what an incredible opportunity for me to meet citrus leaders from across our state and the families behind this industry that have been in it for generations and generations. And I have to say that program really grew and developed me as a person. It grew and developed me professionally. And becoming Miss Florida Citrus was indeed the most rigorous job interview process I have ever been through. Yeah.
And I think pageants in general get a misnomer. There's a misnomer about them that, it's just a beauty pageant. Well, that's a small element of it, but it is a job interview.
Yeah.
And it teaches skill levels to young ladies that may not have the ability to get them in any other way. And I've said this to the last 2 Miss Floridas. I would hire just about anyone I met in the Miss Florida organization to work for us because they are phenomenal young ladies.
Yeah.
And again, it gave you the opportunity to travel all around the country, perhaps around the world, meet people you would never have had the opportunity to meet.
Yep.
And that was back before you went from Miss Florida Citrus as a feeder into the Miss Florida pageant, but you were Miss Bartow a year after that.
I was Miss
Or
Bartow in 1988.
80? Oh, before that. Okay.
Yeah,
Was that
before
your
that.
first? Was that your first pageant?
Yeah, and the first year I did Miss Bartow, I don't even think I placed.
Okay.
So it was the second year
Sweet
that I
vindication.
won. Yeah, and boy, what a growth experience for me. That was, yeah, 1988. I won and competed in the Miss Florida pageant in 1989 at the age of, I think it was 18, maybe 19. And that was an intense experience. I listened to your interview with Kasana, Miss
Yeah.
Florida, current Miss Florida, and I can so appreciate the over preparation that she talked about going into that kind of contest and that kind of week, and how intense it
Right.
was. And it truly was. Yeah.
And they prepped for months and months.
Oh, yeah.
And and then she went on to the Miss America pageant.
Yes.
First week of this year, end of last year. I forgot which day it was. Third runner up.
Yeah.
But just listening to her preparation and what all she went through.
Oh, yeah.
Just to get there. She didn't just show up on Friday and say,
right.
okay, let's go. It was an intense training. So
For sure.
I agree with that. So
Yeah.
after your Miss Florida Citrus, is that when you went to work with IEG?
Yeah, so I became Miss Florida Citrus when I was teaching. I mentioned I started my
Right.
career as an elementary school teacher here in Polk County. I was teaching second grade at the time at Scott Lake Elementary, and became Miss Florida Citrus and took a year off of my career as a teacher to kind of transition into that role for a year, which was a full-time job. And went back to teaching for a couple more years after I was Miss Florida Citrus. And from there, went to the fairgrounds and joined their marketing team. And it was through some agriculture connections and family friends that I had an opportunity, the door open to go and join the team at the Florida State Fair and head up their sponsorship initiatives. And I was the first full-time person to take the lead on corporate sponsorships for the fairgrounds, and that was really important for that organization at the time. And from there, went to IEG in Chicago, and was recruited by them to join as a VP level consultant in
What is
2000.
IEG? What does that
Yeah.
stand for? What do they do?
Yeah,
It's
so
a
when-
worldwide company.
Yeah, when the company was founded in the mid 80s by a brother sister team, Lisa and John, IEG stood for International Events Group because one of the co-founders, Lisa, had worked for the Chicago Mayor's Office of Special Events and just saw the potential for the sponsorship industry within Florida. And she really put the industry on the map because she began to research, analyze, and forecast and report on the sponsorship industry literally globally. Everything from fairs and festivals to pro sports teams to global nonprofits, professional membership associations. And so she really put the industry on the map. And we were the leaders in the industry when it came to research, valuation of deals, sponsorship deals, and consulting. And I got to know IEG because I was attending their conferences. I needed to learn about the sponsorship industry when I was at the fairgrounds. And I retained them to consult for us and develop a strategy for us that I spent a couple of years implementing. And that's how that door opened. And they invited me to come join their team. And I was their first telecommuter back in 2000.
So you never moved to Chicago?
Never moved to Chicago. Dane and I, my husband, literally, we had just gotten engaged 9 days before I got the offer to join the IEG team.
That could throw a kink in things.
Yeah, it could throw the kink in things. And given the fact I married a third generation citrus grower and cattle rancher, he was not going to uproot his trees and cows and real estate holdings and move to Chicago. So we agreed to telecommute, and it was a great ride for 12 years, an incredible ride. I got to see and do and experience things all around the world.
Todd's podcast is sponsored in part by Saunders Real Estate, your trusted partner in land and commercial real estate since 1996. With over 125 expert advisors located throughout the Southeast United States, the full-service brokerage specializes in a wide range of property types from farms and ranches to commercial buildings and development land. If you're looking to build your legacy with a confident investment, please visit saundersrealestate.com or call 877-518-5263 to connect with an advisor today. Did you, so when you talk about the stuff you analyze, did you analyze like how much you should charge a sponsor or how much a company should charge a sponsor, or how much were you on the sponsor side and say, hey, we'll do this event, but we only think it's worth $1, and the sponsors or the
Yeah.
company says, no, if you want to be the title sponsor, it's $2.
Yeah, great question. So I'll give you a couple examples. So we would work on the brand side, the buyer side. So for example, for a period of time, one of our clients was Visa, and their chief marketing officer at the time was renegotiating his 10-year global sponsorship with the Olympics. That's one of the biggest deals out there. And we were advising him on his renegotiations, and we produced a valuation statement for him that documented what we viewed as the fair market value of the rights that he was buying from the Olympics. And so that was a career-defining moment for that person, and we supported him through those negotiations and ensured that he was, getting what he was paying for, and most importantly, also setting up Visa to get a good return on that investment. So we worked on those kinds of relationships. And then when the Minnesota Twins were embarking on building a new stadium up there in Minneapolis, we advised the owner and executives of the team on how to structure their sponsorship programs and packages in a way that would generate the most revenue that they could potentially generate from that asset, the field and the team and all of the assets that come along with that. And so we advised them on that plan and forecasted the revenue that they could potentially generate through various types of sponsorship. So that's just two of many examples of some of the kinds of engagements I was part of.
Was there a formal training to learn how to do that, or was it part of what the brother and sister had just created over time?
Oh, good question.
And then,
Yeah.
okay, Emily, you've been around us. Now use your intuition and,
Yeah.
and your creativity.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if someone says, hey, how much is my property worth? We can go out and find property that's sold that's similar to it, and there's a formula, and there's an art and science to
Yeah.
it. There are statistics that back it up.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, we started as a research company, and we were just researching deals, sponsorship deals, and who was sponsoring what and how much they were paying, and gathering a database, a massive database of information. So nobody had more of that kind of information at their fingertips than IEG did. So we had that to draw from. And then we developed a valuation methodology and intellectual property that was the gold standard for valuing sponsorship assets at the time. And so we used that methodology as well as our consulting methodology that had been developed by Lisa and Paula, another one of my mentors. And so when I joined, I had been exposed to their methodology and their strategy because I had been a client. And I was able to, support other fairs and festivals that wanted to do what I had accomplished here in Florida. But then I had to learn the world of pro sports teams and brands and nonprofits and professional membership associations. And so I just learned as I went. They gave us a lot of good tools and resources to work with, but I had to learn as I go.
How big was the company? How many people did you have?
At our height, we were about 75 employees.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's still focused out of Chicago.
Yeah, always in Chicago. And 6 years into my career there, we were acquired by WPP, the world's largest marketing communications company. And that's what really opened up some executive leadership doors for me. The company is now kind of folded into that global network, and the brand IEG no longer exists, which is kind of sad to look back on that, given the wonderful ride I had with that company and all of the amazing clients I got to work with and friends that I made through the years.
When you were finished with your career at IEG,
Yeah.
and WPP, I guess, is
Yep.
you were renamed.
Yep.
You decided to say, hey, I'm tired of traveling.
Yeah.
I need to be home more.
Yeah.
Your husband wants you more. Y'all want to
Yeah.
spend time together. And that's where you started Emily Rogers Consulting and Coaching.
That's right. Yeah.
I love entrepreneurs. I am one.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in them. I'm intrigued by them. I'm intrigued by, and that's a lot of what I like talking about on this podcast is how you think, why you think the way you do. To me, that's interesting. Hopefully I can make that interesting to the millions and millions that listen to us, or give or take millions and millions. But I think entrepreneurs are what makes this country move forward. I firmly believe that it's the small business. It's the guy or the gal that says, I got an idea. I want to see if I can figure out how to fund it and then figure out how to develop that idea and then get other people to buy into what I'm doing. So tell us more about, let's get into a little more in depth on what Emily Rogers Coaching and Consulting is, or Consulting and Coaching, excuse me.
Yeah.
Did you just have an idea and said, let's go with it? Or you had two masters?
Yeah.
But there's got to be some formal formation.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So when I was named president and chief growth officer of IEG, it was in the fall of 2008 and in the midst of the global financial crisis and the Great Recession. And so that presented a very challenging business environment for a first-time executive. And fortunately, I had the opportunity to work with an executive coach. And I really needed that outside sounding board as a first-time executive and as a leader in a really challenging business and economic environment. And I benefited tremendously from that experience. I also was struggling with work-life balance, and so I engaged a life coach to help me with that. And then as we were working through that recessionary period and I was having to very unfortunately lay people off, we needed to rebuild our team and bring in some team, coaches to help support us in that process. And I saw the power of that as well. And so that was what I thought, I think this is what I want to do, right? I had an amazing ride for those 12 years and learned and grew and developed so much personally and professionally. But I really wanted to, even though I never really left Polk County, I just wanted to reestablish my roots here. And I saw what was happening in our communities and the way our businesses were growing and thriving. And I really wanted to be a part of that. And I wanted to do that right here in my own backyard for a change.
Right.
And so
sleep in your bed,
yes,
bed every night,
yes,
not get on an airplane.
Right. Wake up with my husband every
Right.
morning, eat dinner with him every
Right,
night,
yeah.
take long walks on the ranch, that kind of stuff. So and so I resigned in early 2012 and phased out at the end of 2012, and I knew I just needed a break after all that. I needed to clear my head. And so I gave myself permission to just take a little career sabbatical, and Dane was extremely supportive of that. And I thought I was going to need, 6 months or so to get rested up and ready for whatever I was going to do next. And 3 months later, I hit the ground running. I enrolled in my first coaching training up in Washington, D.C. with the Coaches Training Institute. I started coaching clients in January of 2013 and then just began to build from there.
So it seems, and we did some coaching here at our office a year or so ago.
Yeah.
And it seems like a big part of coaching is teaching good habits.
Yep, for sure.
And breaking bad ones, or
Yep.
trying to figure out how to do that. And so how long does it take to break a bad habit?
Yeah.
We all have bad habits.
Sure.
And some habits are easier to break than others. Maybe some of them just need a little gentle nudge. Some
Yep.
people need a little gentle nudge just to change. Some you almost have to whack them in the back of the head, like Bartow Bill, to say, you've got to make some 180-degree changes here, Bartow Bill, or you're going to end up at Grady's hotel.
Yeah, so it takes time, it takes practice, it takes commitment. And so, what you're describing is behavior change. And
Right.
that's what we're trying to create as executive coaches is behavior change. And it's pretty simply do more of this and less of that if you want to be a more effective leader. I was just having a conversation with a client about that yesterday, and some opportunities we identified for him to be more effective with his team and in this role that he's in. And that can take time. Some of my mentors and teachers have told me it takes 300 times. You need to practice the new behavior 300 times for it to become part of your muscle memory, right? And 3,000 times to embody it and it become like a natural thing for you.
Correct.
It takes
Holy cow.
time, and so that's why a coaching engagement tends to, go on for a longer period of time because we
Right.
can't just flip a switch.
So you're holding the people
And
accountable while they're going
I
through this. I think
am.
that's
Yeah, I am an accountability partner.
Okay.
And people can change. I get asked that all the time. Sometimes I'll do an initial leadership assessment with a new client, and it comes back and it's not what they were hoping to see, and they'll look at me and they'll say, "Can I change?" Or their boss will say, "Can this person really change?" And my first answer is yes, if they're ready and willing to do the work and committed to the process, they can, and they do. And I've seen some incredible turnaround stories.
Are there any real secrets? I mean, you can't take a pill and change
Yeah.
your behavior. I mean, you take a pill and change your behavior, but
Yeah.
not for the better.
Sure.
But I mean, are there any shortcuts, or is it all you just got to put in the time and effort and 300, 3,000? I'd always been told do something for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a far cry from 300 times, unless you're doing it 10 times a day.
Yeah. Some people say it's 90 days. There's different perspectives
Right.
on all of that. Yeah. So is there a magic formula? No. It starts with self-awareness. It starts with self-awareness and a willingness to become more self-aware, to be more mindful of, how you're showing up, the behaviors that are working for you and not working for you. And as coaches, we help clients see their blind spots that they can't see on their own. We all have them. Maybe we think we're really decisive, but our team thinks we're wishy-washy, right? And an assessment will help us see that and better understand what's going on there. And so we need to see what we can't see first and foremost. And so we do that through various personality and leadership assessments. And I also do a lot of mirroring back of, what I'm hearing a client say or how I'm experiencing what they've said or how they're interacting with me. And so I gently hold up the mirror for them so they can become more self-aware. When I see them begin to hold up the mirror for themselves, then I know they've really become more self-aware, and they're better at adjusting in the moment and knowing what they need to do more of or less of in any particular moment with an individual or a situation.
It seems like, though, that people will never change unless they are ready to.
Absolutely.
I mean, no matter, you could be the greatest teacher in the world, the greatest coach.
Yep.
But until I am ready to say, I need to make a change in my life, I need to make a change in my leadership style, in my company, I'm always fighting you.
Yep.
And it seems like once you can break down that barrier to say, Todd, you've got to be ready to say yes, or whatever the terminology is that you use. Are there ways to help people get to that point? I can't imagine you want to beat them down so bad that they've got nowhere to go but up, but sometimes that may work for some folks.
Yeah, that readiness and willingness is key. And when an individual reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I've been thinking about working with a coach. How can you support me in that?" That's a sign they're ready and willing to do the work. One, they're going to make the financial investment in themselves. They're going to commit to a multi-month process and, bi-weekly meetings and taking action on what we talked about between conversations. And that tells me they're ready and willing. So when someone's boss reaches out to me and says, "I see potential," my first question is, well, do they want to be developed, right? Do they want to grow and develop? Are they motivated? And if they are, then there's a high likelihood coaching will support them and we'll get the outcomes we're looking for. If someone's boss calls me and says, "This person really needs coaching, and I really need you to fix this problem in this person," my first question then is, does the person realize they have a problem, and do they really want to change, and do they want to grow and develop, and are they ready and willing to do the work?
And if there's not, there's very little you can
There is
really
very
do.
little I can do.
You can shave around the sides. But
Yeah, there's very little I can do. And, now that I've been doing this for 12 or 13 years now, it's pretty easy for me to vet those kinds of conversations and say, maybe now's not the right time, right? I will be quick to say that, because if I feel like the person isn't ready for whatever reason, I'll just say now's maybe not the right time, And but if they are, then I'm all in, and I'll do everything I can to support them.
So it's kind of sound like if they approach you with hubris, it's probably not going to be a great outcome. But if they approach you with humility and a sense of sincerity, it's like, I really need to make some changes. I've got to get better in my family. I've got to get better at my business. I've got to get better at whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You kind of have that sense from your years of experiences now. You can't BS me. You know,
Yeah.
I can,
Yeah.
my BS meter goes off when I'm talking to you. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, I know when somebody's genuinely interested, and I know when as the coaching process is unfolding, I can see and feel when somebody is fully engaged,
Right.
right? Like, and I get so energized by those conversations when they come back to me in the next coaching and session. I'd say I tried this new thing, or when I was communicating with my team, I tried a different approach, and here's how it went, and we're getting closer to achieving our goals, or I'm stuck and I need some support here. I get really energized by those conversations because they're all in and they're really doing the work, not just in the coaching session, but between coaching sessions, which is where the growth occurs.
Hey, listeners.
Hey, everyone.
Hola.
Hi, all.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, this is Rob Palumbo.
This is Fred Hyde.
This is Juliet Ashley Vine.
Dr. Angela Garcia Falconetti.
This is Congressman Scott Franklin.
This is Margie Grant.
This is Jake Palumbo.
And I want to thank you for listening to Todd's podcast.
Thank you for listening to Todd's podcast.
Thank you for listening to Todd's podcast.
Please make sure that you like and or subscribe.
Don't forget.
Don't forget.
Don't forget to subscribe to Todd's podcast on your favorite podcast app. Tune in and listen.
Join in and listen to us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You come into a company, how many clients, let's say you come into my company.
Yep.
And I say, I got 100 people that need to be changed. Obviously, that's probably too big for you.
Yeah.
Do you say, let's start with your 5 worst or the 5 most acceptable to change, and then we'll do it that way? Is there a group too big for you to handle?
Sure. Good question. We start at the top because, the leaders set the tone and the leaders need to model the way. And if the most
Have you ever said that when a boss came in and said, I want you to work on all these people? Say, well, let's start with you. I'm thinking, how does that go over?
Yeah, well, sometimes that's what needs to happen. That's the conversation that needs to happen. And so if they're willing, again, if they're ready and willing, I like to start at the top. If they're not already being supported by another coach or a leadership development program, because they need to set the tone, they need to model the way. And so sometimes it'll just be in a smaller company, maybe a group of 3 leaders. In a larger company, a group of 12 leaders. And sometimes I'll coach one-on-one, or I'll do group coaching. And so I like to start at the top. And then from there, that will typically evolve into maybe supporting a group of mid-level managers and training them, or group coaching or one-on-one for some of their high potentials. And so, it's just me, and I prefer it that way. So I can't take on too much, and I'm, really diligent about not saying yes to too many things for a lot of reasons. And so we'll start small and then just grow the relationship as it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So a little bit in your introduction, I touched on a couple things, but a lot of your awards and accolades, I did not get into. You go to your website and look at those. But how did you build your business? I got to think you worked your butt off.
I did.
And then you tried different things, and then you worked your butt off. And then you tried some more things, and you worked your butt off. It's got to be just hard work and innovation.
It is, because when I started my business here in 2013, 12 years prior to that, I was gone 75% of the time. And so, I had some personal relationships and some social connections here, but I wasn't a known entity in the business community.
Right.
So I joined NABO, the National Association for Women's Business Owners, and got to know other women business owners in our community, and that became a wonderful and supportive network for me, and many of those folks became some of my clients. I joined the Lakeland Economic Development Council, the Central Florida Development Council that you play a leadership role on. So I just networked and made connections and built relationships and started small and grew from there. Early on, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I did a lot of different things. Right. I was doing strategic planning. I was doing business consulting. I was doing career coaching and life coaching. And, I was doing all of those things, which I can do. And now I don't do that anymore. Even though I can, I don't, because I really want to focus on leaders and teams and executive coaching and team coaching.
I've always told people you have to put yourself in a position to succeed.
Yeah.
And depending on what your situation is, it may be, hey, if you want to be a successful commercial realtor, you've got to take the real estate classes and affiliate with a company.
Yep.
If you want to succeed in your business, you spread yourself out to get as
Yep.
much experience, and then be prepared to take that order when that company says, hey, Emily, I need you to come in here and work with me,
Yeah.
work with a couple of my leaders. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of the great part of the entrepreneur experience is
For
being
sure.
ready to say yes to the order when it comes in.
For sure, and it takes courage to put yourself out
Yeah.
there, you know. What I will say about this community in particular is that, as you know, we are a very business-friendly community.
I agree with that 100%.
And when entrepreneurs, you know, like me, that want to launch a business out of nowhere, we've got people coming out of Catapult every day around here. Our business community embraces that and supports that. And there were some key business leaders in our community that saw what I was doing and said, we need some leadership development. They took a chance on me.
Right.
And it went well.
Right.
And, you know, they told their business colleagues about me. And so much of my business today is repeat business, you know, word of mouth, referrals. That's where it comes from. And it's because of all that work I did that first 5 years.
You talked about the associations that you've had and the women in business organizations.
Yeah.
One of the questions I asked you when we were talking is, do you coach men also? Or are you primarily a woman coaching organization? And you said you coach both, and you probably have more men clients than women.
Yeah, I do, because we have more male leaders than
Right.
female leaders, and that's just
So
the-
you don't
yeah.
you don't push yourself towards one or the other. You're equal opportunity
Oh,
fixer and
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I enjoy working with both male and female leaders. I get a lot of energy from both, and for women in particular, because I've seen the need for women to really develop themselves, and I love to mentor women. I offer a couple leadership development programs that are specifically for women, like my Mindful Leadership Program and Mastering Leadership Program, because I want them to have access to those opportunities in a safe space to grow and develop together.
who's easy? Here's a $100 question: who's easier to coach, or who's more receptive, a man or a woman?
They really both are, truly, and I'm not just saying that to
Oh,
be
yes,
nice.
you are.
They truly are. It goes back to that readiness and willingness. You know, it really, and the willingness to do the work.
I think men have got to be easier to be coached because we're being coached all the time by women. So talk forwarding the action. That's one
yeah.
of the things. Let's talk a little bit about that. What is that?
Yeah.
And tell me what that means in your company and what you teach with that.
Yeah, so there are some approaches and methodologies that I use as an executive coach. You know, one of those is making sure we're really clear on goals early on in the coaching process, and those goals can change and evolve. And if they do, we refocus and redirect. And so what I'm always looking for in a coaching engagement is, what are the outcomes that we're trying to accomplish? And what is the action that the client needs to take to get them closer to the outcomes that we're trying to co-create? Because I'm a partner in the process, but ultimately they're the ones that have to take action and put what we talk about into practice. And so, you know, at the end of just about every coaching session, I'll ask my client, after all that we've kind of unpacked and discussed related to what matters to them and the goals that we're focused on, I'll ask, what's your best next step? And what's your level of commitment to taking that and doing something with it? And so, and I do that because I want them to, one, lock in what they've learned, you know, and talk about what was most useful and valuable about our conversation, and to decide in that moment before we wrap up what they're going to do with what we talked about. And so that's what we mean by forwarding the action. And then, you know, a couple weeks later when we re-engage, I'm always interested to know, well, what did they do? And if they didn't do anything, I'm not, you know, passing judgment on that. I'll just get really curious. Well, what happened? What got in the way? And does it still make sense to do that eventually? Or do we need to redirect? And so it's always about moving forward in coaching.
How about legacy leadership and legacy thinking. I want to talk about that for a second.
So I attract a lot of legacy-minded leaders into my practice.
What does that mean, legacy-minded leaders?
Taking the long view, being really intentional about impact that they want to create. And when I say impact, I mean, certainly, from a business perspective, there's, bottom line, revenue and profitability impact that they want to create. But it's really above and beyond that. In many cases, with the leaders that I'm engaging with, it's about creating a healthy organizational culture, helping their employees grow and develop and thrive, and supporting them, engaging in the community in meaningful ways, and looking for ways to give back and involve their employees in that. And even in their families, and the roles that they want, the leadership roles that they want to play in their families or their churches or organizations that they're involved in. And so that's what I mean by legacy minded. They're looking beyond today and the immediate results that they know they need to accomplish that month or that quarter or that year, and beyond, and focusing on longer term sustainable impact. And so because of that, and just my interest in that topic of being legacy minded, I launched a program a few years ago. And I thought it was going to attract leaders that are kind of later in their career. They've got 5 to 10 years left. And what is it that I really want to accomplish these last 5 to 10 years in my career or in running my business? And I do get that. I thought it might attract people who are really philanthropic in nature. And certainly, I get people that are very philanthropic and want to give back financially to the community. But I get all walks of life. Young people that are in their 30s.
They're already worried about their legacy? That are thinking about their legacy?
That are thinking about their legacy.
Wow.
Or people in, government leaders, nonprofit leaders. I'm getting all walks of life, and it's just amazing to me to learn more about what matters to them and to support them in getting even more clear about who they want to most influence and support and the kind of impact that they want to have and how to do more of that in the near term and the long term. And so I take them through a program and teach them how to do that.
I've noticed that political leaders who want to leave a legacy typically cost other people a lot of money.
This is true, and you would know that given the roles that you played.
I did.
Yeah.
My legacy was to get out and not be bothered. But I want to have something named after me, or I want to do. Some do it for the right reason. I want to do it to create a better society, better whatever. Blah blah blah. Not. But others are saying, hey, this is my chance to shine.
Yeah.
I want a building named after me.
Yeah.
Or a road or whatever. And I better be really involved in this part of politics to get that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I better make sure I'm setting aside enough money so when they're ready to name a building after me, there's money to build that building.
Yeah.
Presidential libraries, I think, may be something of that same thing. So.
Sure. Yeah. That's one way that you can build a legacy. Yeah.
Hey everybody, this is your host, Todd Dantzler. As most of you know, I'm a partner with Saunders Real Estate and have been a very active and working broker for over 42 years. I have fostered strong relationships throughout the state of Florida, working on properties ranging from agriculture and development land to multifamily, commercial, and industrial projects. If you have any real estate needs at all, please give me a call. I'd love to help. My direct line is 863-877-2846. Thank you. Do you go into companies and help, and there's a word that's eluded me for the last 5 minutes, I'm trying to think of it, is to help companies identify next generation leaders.
Yes.
To say, okay, I may have a son or a daughter that thinks they're going to take over this company, but they can't run to the bathroom without instructions. I really have identified Mary or John, the next level down, or a VP. Yeah. And I don't trust my child to run the company. They could be the figurehead.
Yeah.
But to run the day-to-day operations, I've got to get Mary or John, who has been training and has the technical skills to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's leadership succession planning.
That's succession planning.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And I do a lot of that with family businesses and larger companies. And so when a CEO is preparing for retirement, for example, or a business owner is preparing for retirement, and they want the business to continue to sustain and grow, they've got to have a strong leadership bench that's ready to step in. And so I will support that process. And I've done a lot of that through the years. And I help them identify who has the capacity to potentially step into a more senior role and be effective, and who doesn't. And I help them navigate the delicate conversations that need to unfold throughout that process about who is and isn't getting selected for these emerging leadership roles.
Yeah. I mean, part of the succession planning is make your company desirable for someone to buy it, because there is no one to come along and keep it going. And it may be, I'm going to sell it and I'll take that money and then create a legacy, either donating it to X, Y, or Z or my family or whatever. So I think that might be kind of a hard conversation is you really don't have anyone here. You need to spend the next 3 years grooming someone to come in and take over the role. Or you got 2 or 3 people to pick from. They just need a little bit of technical skills to learn, or they need to work on some people skills or whatever. So you do go in and identify.
I do, yeah.
And here's the question that you probably can't answer, but how long does it take to do that? Is it, hey, I spend 30, 40 hours within the company looking at everybody, talking to them? Different companies have got to have different needs. They've got to have different people in line, different quality of people in line to take over that have either technical skills or their personalities. So is there anything other than just your experience that you take in and say, give me a week, I'll find out the top 2 or 3 people you need to be making sure they're here?
So I take a little more technical approach to it, in that there are leadership assessments and aptitude tests and personality assessments that I can administer to get some data on the person, because I may not know the person.
Right.
Or the people that are being considered for succession planning. So there's that. I'll spend some one-on-one time with those people, right? And then I can even conduct focus groups to get perspective on, leaders that others in the organization see as having potential to grow and develop and be effective in higher level leadership roles. So there's a number of different approaches that I take. It can take several months to get to the answer of, okay, of these, 8 people that I've spent time with, you've got 2 really high potentials here that could step into a CEO role. I mean, that can take months. And then if those folks are interested in potentially advancing and everybody's in alignment, yes, we want to invest in these 2 leaders that we see potential in that could potentially step into higher level roles, then that's when the executive coaching process comes in. And I'm coaching for succession planning purposes and coaching those individuals to ensure when the time comes for them to step into those roles that they're ready. So that's why advanced succession planning is so important. The clients that I work with that do it best are planning years in advance.
Could you take a company that's never even thought about it that says, hey, I become ill, or hey, I need to make a lifestyle change. I got to find someone in the next year. But I haven't even identified.
And you can do it quicker.
So you can intensify that analysis.
It's you have less options when you're under a tighter timeline, but you can get in there and figure out what they've got to work with and who has potential and who to invest in and develop to get them ready. And then once those leaders step into that new role and the previous leader has transitioned out, I often will stay on as an executive coach with that leader as they're, going through their first 18 to 24 months in that new role.
What are the barriers that you had to overcome in building your business?
Barriers. So one, just becoming more known in the business community, as I mentioned earlier. So lots of networking and relationship building. But I enjoyed that. I didn't really see that as a barrier, but it was certainly necessary. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be where I am today. Helping people understand what is professional coaching. There's all sorts of, perceptions about what this is or isn't. And it's, it's not therapy. It's not chatting over coffee with a mentor or a friend. There's a defined process. There's outcomes that we're striving for. It's measurable, which is really interesting. I mean, I can measure progress. I can see progress in business results, in my interactions with people, in reassessments that I do of leaders. I can see and measure progress. And so a lot of people just don't understand what it is or how it works or how they might even benefit from it. So
And I'm one of
just
those guys.
educating people.
There is quantifiable evidence that you can say, hey, you're making progress or you're a little behind where you should be.
Yeah. And I'm, super achievement oriented, and I'm always wanting to, see progress. And so, and it's measurable. And there's just a lot of benefit from it. And I think it's just important for people to understand and stay curious about that.
One of the questions I had, and I think you've answered it for the last few minutes, was if an individual group decides, hey, what can you do for my company? You've kind of been talking about that.
Yeah.
But let's say someone says, hey, I like what Emily's been talking about. I would like to talk to her about engaging her company and find out really more. I mean, we got a taste of it here on this podcast or seeing you around the community. What would someone need to do to engage you, to have you come in and do the analysis? What does that take?
Yeah, it would reach out. We'd have an initial conversation and explore some possibilities. What I like to do early on is get a sense of where are they today, what's working, what's not working, and get a sense of what it is that they would potentially like to accomplish through individual coaching or team coaching. And I want them to get a sense of what it would be like to work with me. And so I want them to get to know me. So the process starts out pretty slow and gradual. I rarely walk out of an initial meeting and say, I'll get a proposal to you next week. We usually have a series of conversations to get to know each other and for me to better understand what really matters to them and how I can best support them. And there might be a number of different ways that I could support them, but then we need to figure out what's the best place for us to start. And that can be different for different organizations. And so we'll have several conversations about that before I'll put something in writing and put a budget and a contract in front of them. Right. Yeah.
How many people would you take on at a time? And again, everything's subjective. Would you take on 5 companies, or would you say, hey, Todd, if you want me to do your company, I can handle your top 5 people, 5 really, to start off, because it's going to be so intense. And then after 2 or 3 months, we can cut it back a little bit.
Sure.
And we can either bring in the next level of folks or, how does that work?
That's exactly how it often works.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do they get in touch with you? Website, is that the best way, is to go onto your website?
Yeah, my website is emilyrogers.com. There's a contact form, and you can reach out to me that way. I welcome a conversation. I truly do.
So you don't have to see people in person. You can, some of your coaching is Zoom calls or whatever, or team meetings.
Yeah, coaches were among some of the early adopters of Zoom long before the pandemic. And so I've coached folks around the nation regularly since I started. Yeah, because some businesses that are headquartered here in this community have a national footprint or a regional footprint. And so, so I work with leaders on Zoom all the time.
That you've never met in person.
In some cases, yes.
So don't let the location barrier be part of not giving Emily a call if that's what you think.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you thought he was really going to ask me about this, other than the Bartow Mafia that you were part of back in the day, and Bartow Bill and the other crazies? Or is there something that, I wish you'd asked me about that?
Growing up in Bartow was really wonderful. I'm a small town girl, and if you had asked me as a teenager or a young adult that if you'd asked me if I thought I'd be president of a company headquartered in Chicago or an executive coach here in this community, I would have, never answered yes to that question. And I would just say I'm here to where I am today because of the people who saw potential in me and opened doors for me and believed in me. And I'm so grateful for that. I truly am. This is just a wonderful community, from my small, town roots in Bartow to this incredible county that we live in that has experienced so much growth. And to be part of that and to have played a role in some way in that over the last 12 or 13 years has really been incredibly meaningful to me.
Have you ever thought about a career in politics?
Absolutely not.
Why not? You would be excellent at it.
Absolutely not. No.
They could use rational thought.
Thank you. I appreciate that, but no thanks.
Well, local government is where I got my teeth. And, I like that better.
Yep.
You do get a lot more immediate feedback because you see
do.
people at Publix or at church or wherever. It's a lot less ideological than if you go to Tallahassee or DC. But, down here we're helping the county and the cities run, and that's what I really enjoyed about it.
Yeah.
So I think you would be great at it.
Thank you.
Have you ever coached a politician?
I have. Yeah. I've coached some elected officials. I
Really?
absolutely have.
Did you have success with them,
government
or?
and government leaders. Yeah. Yeah. And I've enjoyed those conversations. I've learned a lot from them and enjoy engaging in those conversations. They're doing really important work. It's just not work that I would
It's not
want
for
to
everybody.
do. Yeah.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to text you Bartow Bill's contact information,
please
and I
do.
will sponsor the first 3 months with them.
Okay.
If you give me a
Sounds
10% off coupon, a Groupon or whatever it's
You
called
got
these
it.
days, because he's going to need a lot of work. But, Emily, thank you very much for coming in and talking about Emily Rogers Consulting and Coaching. I appreciate it. And if you feel like you want to call Emily and find out what she does and maybe explore what she can do for your company, EmilyRogers.com.
That's right.
Correct?
Thank you,
And
Todd.
they're located right here in Bartow. So thank you for coming in. Thank you for what you do for our community and for the business community. But you also would coach people personally. It doesn't have to be
yes.
for their company. If
Yeah.
I'm struggling and I just want to be a better person, you could do that as well.
Do some of that here and there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming in, and I hope you all have enjoyed this episode of Todd's podcast, and we will talk to you next time. Thank you very much, Emily.
You're welcome.
Hey, everybody, I want to thank you for listening to Todd's podcast. This has been your host, Todd Dantzler. If you enjoyed this episode today, I hope you'll join us next time when we talk to Carter Henney. He is a marine biologist, and we're going to talk about water quality issues, seagrass restoration, and a lot of other issues that are important for bodies of water, how we need to be taking care of them. And I hope you'll join us when we talk to Carter Henney. It's a great episode. As always, don't forget to rate, review, follow, and subscribe to Todd's podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you have any questions for me or any suggestions for future guests, please call or text our number at 863-288-0944 or visit todddantzler.com. Again, that's 863-288-0944 or visit my website, TODDANTZLER.com. I look forward to hearing your questions and feedback, and please take care.